The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 208. We're just about a week away from the opening of fall camp for the Wolverines. We'll talk about that and more coming up next on this week's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. I hope you've all had a great summer. Here it is, the last week of July. Next week, the Wolverines report to fall camp, so football season is right around the corner. In August, we're back to our weekly broadcast schedule. We'll be doing our B10 Roundup, then the next week previewing the offense, the week after that previewing the defense, and by the fourth week of August, it will be time to preview the opener against Appalachian State. So we're back to a very busy schedule, and I hope you'll tune us in each week. Today, we're talking Michigan football with the football editor of one of our very best Michigan blogs. Joshua Henschke will be our guest. Joshua, again, is the football editor at Maize N Brew. Before we get to that, let's take a look at Wolverine news and notes for this week. Taylor Lewan's assault case heads to jury trial. The court date is set for October 28th. Many of the watch lists have been out for a couple of weeks now. Michigan's Devin Gardner is included among the nation's top quarterbacks on the Davey O'Brien Award watch list. Devin Funchess has been named to the Bolitnikoff Award watch list for the nation's top receivers. Jake Ryan has been named to the Butkus Award and Lombardi Award watch lists. Blake Countess has been named to the Jim Thorpe Award watch list. And Michigan's Frank Clark, Blake Countess, and Jake Ryan have all landed on the Nagurski Trophy watch list. B10 Media Days coming up this weekend. Frank Clark, Devin Gardner, and Jake Ryan will represent Michigan. That's this coming weekend, and then they will be back for the start of practice next week. A little more than a week ago, Coach Brady Hoke confirmed that Doug Nussmeier will coach from the sideline in 2014. Very different from Coach Al Borges, who was up in the booth, so we'll see how that works out. Coach Nussmeier seems to like the idea too. Athletic directors Dave Brandon from Michigan and Gene Smith from Ohio State said earlier this week that there's not a night game in the future for the Buckeyes and the Wolverines on Thanksgiving weekend. They like the noon start, maybe at the latest 3:30, but because of this intense rivalry, both athletic directors agree an early start is just fine, at least for now. Well, kickoff times have been set for two of Michigan's home games in September. The opener against Appalachian State will be at 12 noon. Of course, the next week, Michigan on the road for a big game, the conclusion of the Notre Dame-Michigan series, at least for now. That game, as we've known for quite a while, is going to be a 7:30 p.m. kickoff and will be broadcast nationally by NBC, the Notre Dame Broadcasting Company. Then week 3, Miami of Ohio pays a visit to the Big House, and that game will kick off at 3:30 p.m. in the next week or so, or maybe by the time this show posts, we'll have some start times for some of the October, maybe even some of the November games. As this show publishes, I'm actually on vacation up in the UP, getting 1 week away before the start of the season. Again, we go back to our weekly broadcasting schedule in August, and that runs right through April, so it's going to be a very busy time. On today's Michigan Game Day segment, I'm going to be joined by the football editor of one of our very best Michigan blogs. His name is Joshua Henschke, and the blog is Maize N Brew. That's coming up next here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Joining us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week is the football editor at one of our very best Michigan blogs. It's called Maize N Brew. And joining me is Joshua Henschke. Joshua, great to have you on the show for the first time.
Hi, thanks a lot for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, as we all know, Joshua, camp is right around the corner, football camp that is. Michigan fans ready for another season. And, you know, it's fun to look at the talent on Team 135. There's no shortage of that. And look at what we think could be the season and dream about that. But there are a lot of question marks surrounding this team, aren't there, Joshua?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even remember the last time there's been this many question marks, maybe arguably under Rich Rod. But, there's a lot of question marks, but, there's talent and depth on the roster. But unfortunately, a lot of that talent is inexperienced right now.
And, it seems like most of the preseason magazines, they're pretty much all out on the shelves now, and the websites, the blogs are all starting to predict what's going to happen this season. It seems like everyone is focusing on an Ohio State, Michigan State in the East Division. In some cases, I've seen Michigan pick third in the division, even fourth behind Penn State and some others. Does that seem about right to you heading into the season?
Well, I definitely think, as a conference as a whole, I definitely think this is, an Ohio State or Michigan State conference to lose. Clearly, right now they have the best returning talent in the conference. You could make an argument for someone like a Wisconsin who has clearly an easy path to the conference title game. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I truly think there's going to be an Ohio State or Michigan State appearance in there, and maybe Wisconsin can give them a run for their money. But I still believe it's going to be one of those two.
And, looking at the first year of the East Division and the West Division, everyone's excited to see how that shakes down, of course, with Rutgers and Maryland coming into the conference. But I think across the board in most of the preseason publications, again, the Big Ten is not held in very high regard, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those conferences that's been, on a downward slide for a while. So I think what they need is a big bowl win, and definitely Michigan State's Rose Bowl victory last year definitely helped the conference's cause. But it's against at teams like the SEC and stuff like that in big bowl games. It's definitely suffered. So I don't know what it's going to take to get the conference back in good graces, but maybe even national championship by an Ohio State or a Michigan State or something like that. It's definitely been a downward slide.
Well, I think it's going to probably take a couple of years of some good bowl games, favorable records as a conference in the bowl games against good opponents.
I agree. It's definitely going to be a process. It's not going to be something that's fixed in like 1 or 2 years. It definitely needs to be consistency. Something that Michigan needs as well to get back into the good graces. They need consistency as well, especially against good teams.
Well, Joshua, getting back to Michigan, we're very young. You've heard Brady and others on his staff say that a lot, and we all know it's very true. It's not an excuse. It's just a fact. There are a lot of young guys that are going to have to perform at a high level if Michigan is going to turn the corner this year. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts with the, returning leadership. A guy like a Devin Gardner, Jake Ryan, Blake Countess, guys like that. There's not that many seniors on this roster, but I definitely think these younger guys are going to rely on the older, more experienced players to kind of help them along. Because it's definitely, I almost feel like it's going to be a transition year, but at the same time I don't, because I really want to see the team grow and become, more experienced and not have that mid-season, fallout that they've had in seasons past. So I definitely think that starts with the senior leadership and works its way down.
Well, the one group we have to really see step up is that offensive line. We all know that. Despite all of the weapons Michigan has, and there are plenty at receiver and in the running game, and of course Devin. But if that offensive line isn't improved, it just won't matter, will it?
Absolutely. The offense will live or die underneath that offensive line, and that's really the biggest question mark on that offense. It's really hard to predict what's going to happen, because if you look at the spring game performance, you can really only take that with a grain of salt, because it's so minuscule in the grand scheme of things that it's probably going to be forgotten about midway through the season anyway. But I mean, absolutely, it's a major concern right now. Like I said, the talent's there. It's just they need consistency, and I think that's something that they need to show this year. And the coaching staff needs to be patient and avoid shuffling players in and out like they did last year. I mean, there was way too many combinations of offensive linemen there, and it was just never destined to work. So I'm hoping there's more patience. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a growing process. I don't know. I mean, I think if you look at the offense from last year, I think it definitely can't get any worse. So I think there's going to be improvement, but how much of an improvement is pretty much yet to be seen. So we'll see early on because there's some great opportunities to jump on teams and get some good progress going there.
Do you think the offense is going to take time to develop this season under first-year offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier?
Yes and no. I think they'll be okay. I think under Doug Nussmeier, I think they're already in a better position than they were under Al Borges. I think the kind of philosophies that Brady Hoke wanted to install, I think they're better fit under Nussmeier than they were with Borges. So I think it's going to be an improvement. I don't think it's going to be any type of magical 100% turnaround. But I definitely think this year is going to be an improvement on the field from the offense as a whole. But like I said before, it's going to be a slow growth process, especially with the youth that's on the roster right now.
Well, for Devin Gardner, Joshua, this is it. It's his senior year. Along with the offensive line, so much is going to hinge on whether Devin cuts down on the mistakes we saw last year, and he's a leader on the field. It's all right there in front of Devin for the taking, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think he's the guy. I've been saying it since the season ended last year after the bowl game. Shane Morris did well with a watered-down offense against Kansas State, but at the end of the day, this is Devin Gardner's team. I don't see a situation where they could possibly bench a near 3,000-yard passer, especially a guy that's returning. If he would have played the final game and wasn't injured, he could have broken some serious single-season records. So he's capable. A lot of that, we've seen what Devin Gardner can do with a competent, offensive line. He's done some excellent work in the past, and I think, this year, like you said, it's kind of put up or shut up time for the whole offense, not only with Devin Gardner as well.
Oh, bingo. I think you hit the nail on the head. Last year we saw, as you said, he had really statistically a pretty darn good season, take away the interceptions. Mm-hmm. But when you really look back at last year, by mid-season, he was one beat-up guy, and if he wasn't throwing on the run, he couldn't stand there long. So that offensive line has to help him out this year.
Absolutely. I think that whole offense was just kind of worn down, and it almost seemed like they were shell-shocked. They were just beat up, worn out, kind of just, it was a very strange time last year. But coming into this year, absolutely, I would like to see Devin Gardner run less. If the longer he can stay in the pocket and the longer the offensive line can keep him in the pocket, I think it's going to be more successful in the long run, and we can avoid injuries like he suffered against Ohio State last year. So, this year he could again put up some nice numbers. If he didn't struggle early on last year, his season probably would have been pretty great, or even better than it was towards the latter half of the season. So, yeah, again, all the offense, every single question mark falls back on the offensive line. So, again, we'll see what happens, but they're fortunate enough that Devin Gardner can make plays on his feet as well when need be.
With us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week is the football editor at Maize N Brew, one of our very best Michigan blogs, Joshua Henschke. Joshua, when we look at this offense, are we overestimating, or does this offense have, in your mind, what it takes for Michigan to compete and win, especially in big road games like Notre Dame, in East Lansing, and then down in Columbus?
That one's going to be tough. I think... Ohio State is, I wouldn't say light years ahead of Michigan, but they're definitely, as far as talent and how the team is competing and playing. I think they're ahead of Michigan right now. Obviously, the past couple of seasons, Michigan has played Ohio State very well and they've suffered single-digit losses, which is an improvement. Obviously, you want to beat the Ohio States and Michigan States of the world, but it's the offense has a lot of inexperienced youth, especially you got the receivers. You've got three guys who basically had somewhat receiving experience last year in Funchess, Cheffin, and Norfleet, and the only guy that's returning with some solid numbers, I guess if you want to call it, is Devin Funchess with over 750 yards receiving. So it also shows how much of an impact Gallen made on the offense last year. So it'll be interesting to see how they recover with Gallen's absence. And then you want to move over to the running backs. Derek Green and Devion Smith, both of those guys, they had playing time, but not as much as you would like as returning guys. So there's a lot of inexperience there, and I think that's the kind of experience they're going to have to gain on the fly this year. So we'll definitely see if that's something that they can pick up as the season progresses. But I'm not sure, if the season started today and they had to open up against a Michigan State or an Ohio State, I'm not sure how well Michigan would fare against them right now.
Well, over on the D, there's a nice combination of talent and depth at linebacker, the secondary, and in the trenches. But really, that's about all we can say about this unit without having seen them play.
Exactly. The linebacking core is extremely deep. A lot of good guys that can shuffle in and out there, which is excellent. I think it's finally Michigan's finally starting to get some decent depth on the defense. That's something that Michigan hadn't had on a very long time. So it's very encouraging to see. You've got guys like Blake Countess returning. Had 7 interceptions last year, which is a huge improvement. If you want to look at defensive back growth over the years, that's quite a great number if you consider seasons past. But yeah, there's a lot of good talent that can be shuffled in there. Again, there are some areas of inexperience. I'd like to see the defensive line take a step up this year. I think Michigan's been lacking a decent pass rush for quite some time. Maybe if you want to make an argument for Van Bergen and a Mike Martin since those days, but that's definitely a area of concern for the defense so far.
Well, overall, Joshua, any players you think are going to have a breakout year, maybe a Freddie Canteen, Jabril Peppers, everyone expects him to walk on and be an All-American, but any others you can think of?
Well, I think, Freddie Canteen, I've been really excited since Michigan recruited him. I followed his recruitment. I really thought he was a solid, under-recruited guy, and I think Michigan really got a steal. Again, like I said, you can't really take a spring game performance and make it translate to what it's going to be like in an actual game situation. But, he's shown that he's got somewhat of a mastery of the offense, and he's fortunate enough to be coming in for a first-year coach, so everyone's kind of learning the scheme. So he's in a perfect situation to break out. I think Michigan needs a number 2 receiver. So, and I definitely think he's going to be getting the start as the second wide receiver, and I definitely think he's going to be the guy that breaks out this year.
Do you think Jabril Peppers is in the starting lineup, or is he just going to, be eased in?
It's really hard to make a case for Jabril Peppers right now. Everyone talks about how fantastic he is, and I'm sure he's going to be a very good player. But to make labels like people have in the past, like the next Charles Woodson, I think is a bit premature. I'd like to see him, play a defensive snap first to play a collegiate game. But I think he's going to be a guy that, that's going to be very valuable to Michigan. He can do many things. He can return kicks, he can return punts, he can, make tackles, he can make interceptions, he can even play on the offense if need be. But I think I think he will start. I think you'll see some very, very positive playing time this year, and I think he'll make a difference. I don't think he'll make an immediate, All-American, all whatever type of impact, but I think he'll be a very reliable guy year one.
Yeah, expectations way too high for that young man, and there will be a lot of pressure. It's really unfair.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is unfair because these some fans have these expectations through the roof that are almost unachievable, and if he's flirting with the unachievable, people might label him a bust, which is really unfair because he's a guy just coming into college and still learning the game, especially at the next level. So, like everyone else, it's a learning experience. Some learn it quicker, some don't. So, for a lot of people's sake, I hope he's on the quicker side of the learning scale.
Well, Joshua, as we said earlier in the interview, there are a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball as we approach August and start practice for the season. Are you like many of us that follow this team, fans, reporters, and when the sun sets, you just don't know what to expect from this team this year?
Yeah, absolutely. When I get asked the question, what's Michigan going to be like this year, I basically just say, I don't know what type of team they're going to field this season, which is, I would say it's kind of scary. Sometimes during this time of the year, you usually have an idea if your team is going to be good or not, but with this Michigan team, you don't really know. I'm hoping that there's not a repeat of a 7-6 season because that would be near catastrophic for pretty much everyone involved. But I honestly think this year will be better than last. I mean, I think if there's such thing as a rock bottom, I think 2013 was pretty much rock bottom, and it's pretty much all up from here, I'm hoping. So, again, we'll see. I think, Notre Dame, second week of the season at Notre Dame is going to be the first real test to see if they can handle the pressure.
Yeah, that's going to be a pivotal game, if for nothing else, from a psychological perspective, heading into the Big Ten season.
Absolutely, and it's always, since considering it's the last game too, you always want to end that series on a high note too. So, it'd be nice to make that take off that rivalry series with a bang. So.
No excuses for the youth. I know we've been talking about that for a year. In the off season, definitely. You've heard Coach Hoke talk about, hey, we're young, and we all know that. And as you said just a moment ago, a 7-6 season again this year would be catastrophic for everyone. But what do you think is an acceptable record for this team this year?
Well, I've said 9 wins. I think anything over 9 wins is a total bonus and a fantastic year. I think the way the Michigan's home schedule is set up is they can build momentum because they've got some weaker teams coming in. Arguably, you can make an argument saying that Penn State's probably going to be their most difficult game, especially because considering the always hype follows a night game. So, the away schedule again is difficult. Like I said, Notre Dame, you got to go to East Lansing, you got to go to Columbus, and you also got to go to a hungry Northwestern team that's got blood in their set in their minds because they've been had some really funny games against Michigan the past couple of seasons. That's kind of, if I was in Northwestern shoes, that I'd be kind of upset about and want to seek revenge. So it's going to be interesting, that if they can put together a solid string of home wins like they have shown in the past, they might make a pretty good run towards 9 wins. So, it's really hard. Again, it's really hard to predict right now because, again, we'll see how they look against Notre Dame at Notre Dame to see how they're doing. But I don't know. I mean, I think, like I said, 9 wins, I think, is the kind of, towards acceptable. Obviously, you don't want to shoot for 9 wins for low expectations, but it's definitely for this type of team, it's definitely something that's manageable this season.
Well, in those 9 wins, do you think one of them has to be against a Michigan State or an Ohio State?
I don't know if you have. I mean, obviously, you want to beat Michigan State and Ohio State every single season. So I think if one of those wins is against one of those teams, that'd be a great season. I don't know at this point. I don't know who you would rather beat. I mean, that you might want to beat Michigan State more, considering they're the coming off a Big Ten championship season. So I mean, it's tough. Michigan State's really turned it around. They've done a fantastic job of putting a solid team together for a few years now. So it's tough. Michigan State's really changed the landscape of the Big Ten with their run last year, and then hopefully hopefully they can keep it up. I would prefer Michigan State to be a great team, so they'd be competitive against Michigan every time they play them, and same for Ohio State. But yeah, if one of those wins, 9 wins, is a win against either one of those schools, you would take, as a fan, you would take it. I mean, either way, a streak is getting broken, and it shows that Brady Hoke can get his team up and ready for big games, big rivalry games too as well.
Well, if this team isn't 9-3 and somewhere else 8-4, 7-6, do you think the grumbling about the direction of the program under Brady Hoke is really going to amp up?
If it's if the team is shooting below expectations and they're really heading towards another 7-6 season, I definitely think so. I think this year mainly just depends on if the team can show improvement throughout the season. I think a lot of Michigan teams in the past have kind of fallen apart as the season progresses, especially after the midway point. You've seen Michigan start how many times? 5-0, 6-0, and then just completely bottom out after that. So I think if the team can show improvement and, obviously get more wins than they did last year, I think the grumbling will die down a little bit. But considering the Michigan fan base as a whole, I think there's always going to be some type of grumbling no matter who the coach is.
Well, last question for you, Joshua, and this is really a conference question. If you had to pick today who comes out of the East and the West divisions to meet in Indy for the Big Ten Championship in December,
I would say it's going to be real close between Ohio State and Michigan State this year. I think Ohio State will get the best of Michigan State this year, and I think Wisconsin will come out of the West. So I think Ohio State and Wisconsin is going to be a great game. I think Ohio State's going to take the Big Ten this year. I think they're due. They were close last season. They probably would have won the year they were under NCAA sanctions. So I think they're probably due. And we'll see what happens. They've got a very experienced and very solid squad returning this year. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting year, but the nice thing about college football is nothing is ever guaranteed. So we'll see what happens.
Now, you are right on about that, and we don't have long to wait now. Our guest on the show today has been the football editor at Maize N Brew, and I will have the link up on my show notes page, one of our very best Michigan blogs. The guys do a great job there. Our guest has been Joshua Henschke, again, who's the football editor. Joshua, thanks for coming on the program for the first time. Enjoy August, and we look forward to getting you back on during the season to talk some Meeechigan football.
Not a problem. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Coming up next, Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits this week, not a lot of news to report. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm up in the UP this week, getting one last week of relaxation, at least I hope so, before we resume weekly programming in August, which will run right through next April. So it's an exciting and a very busy time of the year. Again, we resume weekly programming during the first week of August. On the last show, I mentioned that Shemi Schembeckler was going to be our guest on this week's show. Shemi's schedule is absolutely crazy right now, but he assured me he will join us in the next couple of weeks on one of our preview shows, so we look forward to that. Make sure you stay in the Wolverine loop this summer wherever you go. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for free membership today. You'll get email updates when a story publishes and have access to our very busy message board. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and become a member today, and you will not miss a thing. If you listen to the show on your laptop or desktop, you can subscribe at iTunes for free delivery each week. Our show app is available at iTunes, the Android Market Store at Amazon.com, and the Windows 8 App Store. You can also find us on TuneIn Radio, Stitcher Radio On Demand, and YouTube. The TuneIn and Stitcher Radio apps are very easy to use, and besides our show, a lot of great podcasts available for you to listen to. I'd like to thank our guest again today, Joshua Henschke. The first time we've had Joshua on the show. He is the football editor at one of our very best Michigan blogs, Maize N Brew. So check out Joshua and his work at www.maizenbrew.com. That's www.maizenbrew.com. As I've mentioned several times now, in 2 weeks we resume regular weekly programming. We're going to do our Big 10 Roundup, followed by a week of previewing the offense, then the defense, and then the fourth week of August, it will be time to preview the App State game and talk about the start of the season. So we're going to be very busy and hope that you will join us each week. I hope it's been a great summer for all of you. It's not over yet, so enjoy it. But in 4 weeks, in most of our minds, summer is over as App State visits the Big House, and we get the 2014 season underway for Team 135. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. We'll see you right back here in 2 weeks as we do our Big 10 Roundup show. Until then, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!